The Aam Aadmi Party's Saurabh Bharadwaj has sparked a row with his comments around the meeting that took place between Prime Minister Modi and President of China, Xi Jinping. He said, "We are running after the Chinese president for talks and they are not responding." He's also said we should try to hold discussions with China before the G20 summit. Remember, the G20 summit is going to be taking place in Delhi in just a few days from now. He said otherwise there will be no red carpet for China in the G20 summit. Take a look at what Saurabh Bharadwaj had to say, then we'll connect with the reporter for more context.
हम चीनी राष्ट्रपति के पीछे पीछे भाग रहे हैं कि हमें बात कर लो, हमसे बात कर लो, मामला सुलझा लो, और वे सुलझा नहीं रहे हैं। तो नुकसान हमारा है, क्योंकि इस वक्त चीन हमारी ज़मीन पे बैठा हुआ है। तो हमको G20 से पहले चीन से दो टूक बात करनी चाहिए, वरना G20 के अंदर चीन के आगे रेड कारपेट हमें नहीं बिछाना चाहिए।
All right, let's bring you a little bit more context when it comes to all of these developments. Remember, over the last few hours, we have seen some controversy generated by one aspect of the readout provided by China. China had claimed in its readout that the Prime Minister's meeting with the Chinese President at the BRICS meeting took place at India's request. And it's this that a number of political leaders have referred to. Saurabh Bharadwaj right now is referring to that when he says that India was running after China. However, a few hours ago, a clarification has already come forward from top government sources in India. They've refuted all of this. They've said that this was very much a pending request from the Chinese side, this request for a meeting. Now, my colleague Pallavi Ghosh is with us to bring us more context. Pallavi, you've joined us multiple times since earlier today. You've told us first about the MIM response, Rahul Gandhi's response. Now we see the Aam Aadmi Party making this response, and they're almost giving advice on the policy and the way in which India should handle its relationship with China. Could you comment?
Well, if I just got your question right, but every time Rahul Gandhi speaks about China, it stokes a controversy because the BJP and the central government accuses him of, one, interfering in India's foreign policy, second, doing it at a time, for example, now when the Prime Minister is abroad, and third, of course, painting an incorrect picture despite the multiple clarifications which has come in from the government. In fact, on the floor of the House,
can I just point out for you, we're also sharing with our audiences that Saurabh Bharadwaj has just replied, and I wanted to ask if you could comment and give our audiences context on that. Saurabh Bharadwaj in his comment has said that India is running after China. He's also said that before G20, India and China need to sit face to face, otherwise India shouldn't roll out the red carpet for them. Could you give our audiences context on that too?
Yeah, so I was just coming to that. So these are those three clarifications which have always been issued by the government, and government says that there are foreign policy issues. There are earlier appointments which are sought, and therefore in international affairs we certainly believe in talking to the Chinese also to put our point forward. As far as criticism coming in, whether it's from the Aam Aadmi Party or from the TMC or from the Congress or either from the OVC, the government stand even now is very much clear. We cannot be dictated by myopic points or concerns as far as our foreign policy issue is concerned. The need to communicate. In fact, the government has often given out statistics to show the many number of times when the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh had also engaged with both the Chinese as well as the Pakistanis, because that's the only way you put forward your point of view. So whether they are those the army level talks, the troop level talks which take place where both the sides engage with each other so as to ensure that there is no flare up of tensions, because the government maintains what happens is that who pays the price if the tension flares up? It's our troops which are working round the clock on the border. So absolute rejection of all these charges from the opposition parties has always come in from the government.
Pallavi, when we take a look at Saurabh Bharadwaj's comment, it's particularly interesting because he's almost suggesting the future steps that should be adopted by India when it comes to the G20 meeting, which we know there's a lot of focus on. Can you just tell our audiences what was the Aam Aadmi Party's intention by pointing to India how they should behave when the G20 comes around?
See, after this Prime Minister's BRICS as well as a Greece visit, the next big international engagement on which India is going to be engaged in is at the G20 summit. This is exactly where I'm standing, where the G20 summit is actually going to be held, Toya. And I think at this point of time, the Aam Aadmi Party and just I think even the Congress Party would want the government to force on the fact with the powers that be who are going to be present over here, including the Chinese delegation, that you cannot engage with us on your terms. You have to engage on our terms. See, it's not that the government has not raised this issue with the Chinese, and that's a clarification which has come in both from the External Affairs Minister as well as from the Defence Minister, that every time these kind of multiple platforms takes place, whenever there has a tours take place, exchange programs take place, in some of which the Prime Minister himself is present, India unequivocally has made it very in a stern tone, made it clear to China as well as to Pakistan, there are no-touch zones. There are territories which just cannot be touched upon by the Chinese. Whether it's been our economic policies at times, whether they have been, for example, recently many of those Chinese apps were dismantled. For India to hurt China economically, I think Indian government thinks that can be one of the most strongest weapons which can be used against them.